10 years ago in pop culture history, Meek Mill had a very public crash out on Twitter that ruined his relationship with Drake. So this is the story of the beef between Meek Mill and Drake. Meek Mill and Drake first started collaborating in 2012 with their hit single Amen. Now this was Meek Mill's lead single into his debut album Dreams and Nightmares, and it also peaked at number 57 on the Billboard Hot 100. Now after the single was out, Drake and Meek Mill became friends for real. Drake brought Meek Mill on stage to perform Dreams and Nightmares while he was on tour in 2013. They were seen at NBA All-Star Weekend. Drake even tweeted out that Meek Mill's Dreams and Nightmares is one of the best moments of rap of our generation. And in 2014, when Meek Mill was sentenced to 6 months in jail for violating his parole, Drake made these free Meek shirts, and he wore them multiple times while he was on tour. Now the next year, 2015, Meek Mill is out of jail and he begins promoting his new album, Dreams Worth More Than Money. One of the things that he does to promote his new album is remix Drake's song Energy. Drake also featured on this album for a song called Rico, which we will get back to. If you also remember, this was the year that Nicki Minaj and Meek Mill were dating, and this year at Coachella, Drake brought Nicki Minaj on stage and congratulated her on her relationship with Meek Mill. Everything seems to be fine, but eventually people start noticing something is a little bit off when Future hosts a Hot 107.9 birthday bash in Atlanta. Now at this birthday bash, Future brings out a ton of guests, including Nicki Minaj, Meek Mill, and Drake. Now despite all of them having songs together, all of them collabing together, they perform separately. Meek Mill and Nicki perform together, and then Drake performs at the end of the night. And that was just an eyebrow raise, because if they were all in the same building, why didn't they perform together? But you could kind of brush that off. You know, it could have been logistics, it could have been rehearsal times, all different types of things. But then at the end of the night, they all go out, and they all go out separately. Meek and Nicki go out with the Migos, and then Drake goes out with Future, 2 Chainz, Kanye, and them. Well, shortly after this, we realized that we are not just hypothesizing or making things up. There's actually beef between Meek Mill and Drake, and it comes to light in this Twitter rant. Throughout this Twitter rant, he calls out Drake for having a ghostwriter. Remember that song Rico I told you about? He also said that if he would have known Drake used the ghostwriter for that, they would have taken it off the album. Now at first this all felt very random, but eventually we learned that Meek Mill was upset because Drake did not promote Meek Mill's second album. And if you remember, Meek Mill also tweaked on Wale for not promoting the album too. Meek Mill says the reason Drake did not promote the album is because Meek Mill's camp found out that Drake was using a ghostwriter. Amidst all the beef, this Toronto counselor, Norm Kelly, responded basically saying that Meek Mill was no longer welcome in Canada, and then Meek Mill responded saying that Norm Kelly sounded like a thug. Now Drake does not initially respond to any of Meek Mill's claims, but his producer 40 does respond. If you're not familiar with 40, you're definitely familiar with his music. He's a huge producer. His name's Noah. Definitely look him up. But he responds basically saying you can say a lot of things about Drake, but you cannot say anything about his pen. Then Funkmaster Flex enters the chat, and he immediately sides with Meek Mill and is like, yeah, we all knew Drake uses ghostwriters. We just kind of let him cook. And then they name the man who they claim is Drake's ghostwriter, Quentin Miller. This is Quentin Miller. He's from Atlanta, but he has vehemently denounced that he is Drake's ghostwriter. Well, Funk Flex responds by dropping Quentin Miller's reference track for Drake's song 10 Bands. Now he says someone from Drake's camp sent that to him, and he also says that Drake has Quentin on retainer for $5,000 a month. And that was when Drake had enough. He released this single, Charged Up, which he debuted on Beats OVO Sound Radio. Now he does not name Meek Mill directly, but it is very obvious who he's talking about. Meek Mill did not respond by getting in the booth, but he did respond by calling the single Baby Lotion Soft. 2 days later, he dropped the single Back to Back, which famously has the line, "Is that a world tour, your girls tour?" Then Meek Mill finally got in the booth and released a diss track of his own called Wanna Know. The song included actual audio from the reference track that Drake used for Know Yourself. Ultimately, this diss track was not received well. He also got in some copyright trouble with the WWE, so he took it down from his SoundCloud page. They go back and forth with some more diss tracks. Drake with Summer 16, Meek Mill with War Pain. Nicki eventually hops back in and is like, these are 2 grown men. I don't want to have to pick a side. I hope they settle it. I guess they did settle it. In 2018, Drake brought Meek Mill on stage in Philly to perform Dreams and Nightmares, and we don't really know what prompted them settling it or why they became cool again, but according to Meek Mill, the 2 of them are friends.